Session Blood.
Right, hello everyone. So today we've got a Blitz matchup for you. We're playing Kano vs Katsu. So I'm Kieran, I'm playing Kano.
And I'm Karol, and I'm playing Katsu.
So Kano vs Katsu, Kieran vs Karol. You know, it's fun. We're having fun here.
Good times, yeah. And Wizard in general, I mean, Kano's been really popular in Blitz. We've seen lots of players kind of, abuse the fact that you have access to streamlined 40 cards that you can, streamline your deck to basically only include the non-attack actions. So you're constantly hitting, damage spells on Kano activations. So yeah, it's a pretty good choice for this format.
Yeah, and this is quite an interesting matchup because sometimes certain ninja decks can struggle because they run quite a few red cards, so their available resources isn't that high.
Mm-hmm.
But Karol's version, as you'll see, is quite interesting because he plays a strategy to try and get around that a little bit.
Yeah, I run 10 blues in my list, and I think it's around 8. I think it's 8 yellows as well.
Yeah, so here we're just seeing I've chosen to go first, and we can see the Katsu player has access to Arcane Barrier 3 with 3 Norins. So here I've just pitched a few cards from my hand to get rid of them, essentially. So I pitched the Blazing Aether because I'd like to save that for later. And I'm considering, do I want to play a card, but decided just to Arsenal and wait for the next turn.
Yeah, I had actually a pretty tough choice. I was considering to Art of War here because I have 2 Art of Wars in my hand, and I didn't know if I could make it work on my turn or not. And yeah, so basically I'm still kind of considering. Ended up not using it, but Art of War is a bit tricky to pitch because you can't attack with Kodachis after pitching Art of War because they won't have go again.
And just one note, if you're playing in real life, like I'm playing Karol and I know him, but don't do what I just did there, where I picked up my pitch cards and sort of held them with my hand, then put them on the bottom of the deck, because obviously at a tournament that can look a little bit dodgy, so...
Yeah.
Luckily, Karol trusts me, the idiot, so... So, here you're just looking to push with Kodachis to get some damage through?
Yeah, Kodachis put just that great card that puts pressure on Wizard. Having 15 life in Blitz, I'm able to deal a significant chunk of damage with those. And yeah, a red leg tap is pretty good in this situation because usually I feel like Kano players try to avoid having defense reactions. So usually this does force a 2-card block.
Yeah, and I've blocked here with Forked Lightning and Sonic Boom. The Forked Lightning I felt against Ninja, sometimes you don't have time to set up that huge attack. So my strategy was more to sort of try chip away at him and try find a window.
And yeah, basically I ended up getting stuck with those Art of Wars. So I got 1 in Arsenal and 1 in hand.
Yeah, so here we see I pitched the blue card to play a Voltic Bolt for 5 damage. Now, I intentionally haven't used the Crucible of Aetherweave, and Karol's sort of alert to that, and here I am, I'm pretending I forgot the Crucible.
Yeah, so leaving 1 resource up just tells me that Kieran has a snapback, because otherwise he would use that resource for the Voltic Bolt to pump with Crucible of Aetherweave.
Yeah, so in this situation, what I'm hoping to do is strip multiple cards from Karol's hand, so I'd actually prefer for this to just deal 2 damage and get rid of a blue card, and then use the snapback to get rid of more cards. So I'm kind of hoping that he maybe only has 1 blue card in hand here, or if he has 2, that I can just shut down his next turn.
Yeah, my draw's a bit awkward against Wizard because I drew a Springboard Somersault, and then I have an Art of War in hand, and I think it's in fine center. So it's not a very aggressive hand in general. So yeah, I'm just kind of considering whether I have enough cards to put pressure on with, or if it's better to just block up as much damage as I can and swing with Kodachis a few times and give Kieran a full hand pretty much.
Yeah, because one thing against Wizard, if you leave yourself a bit open, if you pitch your hand to prevent all the damage on their turn, and then you sort of pitch cards to attack on your turn, you give them a big window to try sort of blow you out with their Kano ability. So that's why Karol's sort of trying to toss up what his best option is here.
Yeah, exactly. Because on one hand, you do want to keep your life as high as possible, because combination of cards like, say, Stir the Aether Winds and Fork Lightning, it's all of a sudden you're facing 14 damage that you can only prevent 3 of. So, yeah, I've decided to get rid of that Art of War that's been stuck in my hand. I kind of wish I've potentially just played it on the first turn, just not using even any activations just to get rid of it. But yeah, now I'm kind of getting punished for keeping them both. I've opted to take the damage because I feel like my hand is still good enough to put quite a bit of pressure on Kieran with. So, yeah.
And also, one thing is sometimes you don't mind taking, what you could call vanilla damage, so damage with no on-hit effects. So one thing you might think of is, I'm okay taking 3 damage on this turn, so I can potentially block something like a Sonic Boom on their turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you can see from my equipment, I've opted to leave the Snapdragon Scalers in and have the remainder of Null Runes just to block the Arcane Damage.
Yeah. And sorry, one thing here, we're just talking about the interaction with Art of War. So Art of War, you choose the 2 modes, but then you pay the cost on the resolution. So it's not an additional cost. So that's very relevant here, because it means that Karol chooses his 2 modes, and then I respond with Kano. Whereas if he had to banish a card now to pay the additional cost, I know it would leave him with less available resources to sort of try block my damage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we were just figuring out that was how it worked.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking here, do I want to respond with Kano now? What I'm thinking is, if he only has 1 attack action in hand and he's chosen that mode, if I can burn that away from his hand by forcing him to pitch it, I can really shut down his turn. I think ultimately I'm just wondering, do I have enough blues to get this through?
Yeah, so for the modes I did choose +1, and I chose Banish. So right now we're seeing Kieran thinking whether it's worth it for him to try and make a play in response to that.
Yeah, because the problem is, if I do make a play here and I miss, then I'm leaving myself open with only potentially 3 cards to block quite a big turn against Karol.
And then you're using up your hand, so then on your next turn you can't really do anything, and then you're just letting the other player draw up and just have a big turn following that.
So I decided to play Cindering Foresight because I feel this gives me the ability, so I get to opt 3, potentially find quite a strong spell on top of my deck, and because of the +1 damage, it means if I get something like Sonic Boom, which deals 3 damage, now it's automatically up to 4, so it will get around his Null Runes.
Yeah.
I think my options were a little bit disappointing here. So.
Yeah, at least you can also basically set up your draws for the next turn, right?
Yeah.
So if you actually reveal 3 blues, that's not necessarily bad, and I think that's what happened here, where it's not actually too bad at drawing blues because it lets you Kano on the next turn potentially.
Yeah, so I think there might have been 1 damage spell on top, so I'm considering about going for it, but ultimately I decide to let Karol resolve the Art of War.
Yeah, so I get rid of that Fine Center.
And one thing that tells me is, I feel if he's banishing the Fine Center, he's probably got another blue card in hand.
Which I think is what was happening. So yeah, the +1, I was hoping to draw something with Go again, but instead I got a red Rising Knee. Yeah, basically this card with 2 cards in hand, I'm either representing a Razor Reflex, or I'm going to be forced to use my Scalers. The good thing about attacking for 4, so Kieran decided to not put any blocks down. I did have to pop the Scalers to go again, and now my Katsu activates upon dealing damage.
Yeah, one thing I was hoping here, I thought that if I block with 1 card for 3, he can use the Katsu ability anyway, and I kind of thought if I can force Karol to put him in a spot where he has to think about whether to use Katsu, because, I Cindering Foresight, I leave the 3 cards on top, so maybe he's thinking, Kieran's waiting for a window to use this, big spell if I use all my resources.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I think Karol's saw through my plans.
Yeah. So yeah, now I got myself a Hurricane Technique, which is coming in for 6 now. So it's probably a good thing for Kieran not to block the initial Raising Knee with 1 card, because it would still activate the Katsu, I'd still get the Hurricane, but his options would be limited for blocking the Hurricane Technique.
Yeah, because Hurricane Technique, so it hits for 4 and it gets +1 from combo, and it also has got +1 from the Art of War here, so it's hitting for 6 damage. Now, if Hurricane Technique hits, it comes back to your hands. So my issue is here that I can't really afford not to block it. Karol's got too much life for me to one-shot him. If I took the 6 damage, it gives him the possibility of potentially pitching a blue card, attacking twice with Kodachi, and Hurricane Technique for 5 again. So, yeah, it's a bit annoying for me here, because I'm thinking, I use the Cindering Foresight, a really good card, which is amazing to place in Arsenal, and I've been a little bit punished for it.
Yeah, and you just can't, constantly facing pressure. Basically, I'm more than happy for Kieran to block that up. I drew a red Flock of the Featherwalkers, so it's a pretty decent card to just get down in Arsenal. So Kieran now opts, even though he knew he was going to get, which is a really good play for having 1 card in hand. A lot of the time, Kano is one of the classes that can't really do much with a single card. You can save something for Arsenal, you can maybe drop an Energy Pot into play, or play a Tome of Aetherwind, which lets you draw 2 cards and then try and make a play with that. But a lot of the time, you basically want to get a Kano player down to only 1 card.
Yeah, and here's a situation where I probably respected Karol's hand too much, so I didn't go for the Scalding Rain at end of turn, because I was worried about him having a blue card. So it turns out he had the Flock, so I might have been able to get 4 damage through, which sometimes it's just difficult. You have to try and decide what you think they have. So here we see Karol's going for a Flock of the Featherwalkers, and again, it's enough damage that I can't just straight up ignore.
Yeah, and the Kodachis are chipping away. There could be a chance that I potentially have a Razor Reflex, or something like that. But I guess it doesn't. You can't really. If I have it, I have it. But
yeah,
and the Quicken token actually sets up a lot of my combo chain links as well.
Yeah, one thing I'm a bit concerned about here is that Karol's revealed a Heron's Flight when he's played the Flock of the Featherwalkers. So that makes me a bit concerned that he can shortcut his combo. So by that, I mean, he can play Crane Dance on his turn, gets Go Again from the Quicken token, and then he can play Heron's Flight. Now, Heron's Flight, allows you, with combo, it deals 5 damage, and you can choose attack or non-attack, and they can't block with that, or they can only block with that version. So effectively that means if he arsenals the Heron's Flight here, which I know he has, and I take 2 damage, if that comes through for 5, I just lose the game. So basically I've blocked here to take 2 damage, in the hopes that I can force some cards out from Karol's hand on my turn.
Yeah, and here we go. Red Aether Flare, which means that Kieran's next attack gets pumped by whatever damage I take. This is one of those very threatening cards that you kind of have to deal with. Otherwise, if something like this happened and I didn't pitch to prevent that damage, I would be staring down at 11 damage, I believe, 4 from Aether Flare, and then 7 from the snapback. So yeah, I was definitely had to stop that Aether Flare to some extent.
Yeah, so that's the great thing about pitching a blue and being able to get this damage through. So I felt that Karol might have a blue Crane Dance in hand. That's why he went for the setup with the Quicken token.
Yeah, I did have a blue Crane Dance.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to do here is get myself in a position where I can force Karol to commit cards and then try kill him if he goes for the big combo.
Yeah, so I pitch and play another flock, which gives me another quicken token, and I do reveal the blue crane downs in my hand. So I'm trying to keep a buffer of resources in case Kieran decides to, go for a Kano play or pop his Striders and use instant speed burn damage.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting spot because he revealed the blue crane dance to me. So the reason I blocked with the Tunic and went to 1 is because now I know that Karol on 8 life, if he plays that blue crane dance, I've got 4 cards in hand. That's quite scary for him if he's only got 2 resources up. He kind of knows that I'll be able to kill him. So we actually see him considering attacking with Kadachi, even though it will break the quicken token.
Yeah, so I remember in the game, Kieran was like, "Oh, you know that the Kadachi will destroy a quicken token," and yeah, I had to do it because dropping down to 1 makes the Kadachis extremely deadly. So right now, I'm just trying to keep that blue crane dance as a buffer, in case Kieran decides to go for an instant speed play. And we can see him trying to dig for something that could be powerful enough to push through that.
Yeah, and ultimately I think when I went back and looked at this, I think they may have been incorrect using the talismanic lens here. The reason being, so I have a red Stir the Aether Winds that you can't see at the moment in my hands. So I have that and I believe 3 blues. So I was thinking if I can find something on top, I might be able to force enough damage.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking about it, I think it was just too resource intensive to go for this play. So what I believe I, in hindsight, should have done is save that talismanic lens, because I know exactly how much damage is coming out this turn.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's going to attack with 2 Kadachis, and he can play the Heron Sleight from Arsenal, which I can block all 3. So I could do what I did, but save the talismanic lens.
Mm. And yeah, I mean, it just being on 1 means that every Kadachi is forcing out a card.
So and also on top of my deck, I did see 2 blues there. So my idea was that I'm going to block out the 2 Kadachis. I'm going to block out the Heron Sleight with 1 card, and then I want to Arsenal my Stir the Aether Winds. So that's a 2-cost card that you can play to give your next arcane spell plus 3 arcane damage. And okay, so ultimately, I guess you played the Crane Dance because you knew I couldn't get through it here.
Yeah, I mean, it was stripping 1 card anyway, and I thought having a Heron's Flight as red is better than having a blue Crane Dance in Arsenal. So
yeah, so I've Arsenal the Stir the Aether Winds here, and thinking, well, I'm going to draw at least 2 blues, so maybe I can try combo Karol out. But I think ultimately I should have saved the Talismanic Lens. The reason for that is, like I mentioned, the Stir the Aether Winds can give plus 3 damage. So what I'm looking for here is a Forked Lightning to try close out the game.
Yeah, and this was interesting because I started kind of getting a little bit worried because I drew 3 reds and a blue. So I think it's an Enlightened Strike,
A Soul Bead.
two red Soul Bead strikes, and I think it was another blue Crane Dance. So I'm just trying to work out the best way that I can attack for at least 1, like I do with the Kadachi. And at first I considered going Enlightened Strike, but that would leave me with 4 resources open. By going Kadachi, now I have 5 with the 2 that I've got left over, and then the 3 red cards in my hand. It's just playing it extra safe against Wizard.
And it's great here because Karol knows that I'm forced to block this here. So if I block with 1 card, then he pretty much knows he has me. Because if I block the first Kadachi, I then have to block the second Kadachi. Then he Enlightened Strikes for 7 damage and I lose.
Yeah, so right now I'm just trying to force a reaction. This is Kieran's window to decide whether he wants to try and block everything up or try and basically go for the win. But because I went for the Kadachi attack instead of Enlightened Strike, I just have a little bit more of a buffer with available pitches.
So what I'm doing here is I'm just checking my graveyard to basically see that I still have a Forked Lightning left in my deck and to see what threats I can potentially go through with to win the game. So
because that Talismanic Cleanse, this is where it would be a bit stronger.
Exactly. So this is where the Talismanic Lens would have been really, really good for me because I've gone through a decent amount of cards in my deck already between pitching and blocking. So being able to go through an additional 2 cards just to search for that Forked Lightning would have been really good. So basically I'm tossing up here where to use my resources, and I decided to use the Striders first because I'm basically thinking, do I just commit to the Sturdy Aether Winds and hope to find something on top?
And I guess having something like an energy potion in your hand, you know you can't block everything out this turn.
Yeah, so I believe I have a Lesson in Lava in my hand. So that's a card that deals 3 damage, and if it deals damage, you can find a wizard card from your deck and put it on top with cost equal or lesser to the amount of damage you deal. So one sort of combo I'm looking for is if I can get just a really big Lesson in Lava Blazing Aether turn. The problem is because Karol has so much life, I'm just worried that it's not going to get there enough damage to actually win.
And I guess the Metacarpus node can help kind of increase that threshold to go over the prevention from Arcane Barrier. But yeah, this is, as staring down, attacking a wizard on 1 life still feels so threatening, because even though I'm on 8 life and have quite a few resources available to prevent damage, something like a Stir the Aether Winds into a big spell can still just be something like even a Sonic Boom and then hit another spell on top, another wizard damage card. It can just end the game before my Kodachi even connects.
Yeah, so here I'm really kind of tanking, thinking do I use the Crucible? Am I going to need this to pitch the Kano? And I'm really kind of second guessing myself, thinking how do I get this damage through? Because in my mind, I know Karol's on 8 life, but I'm figuring I've got to deal probably 13 or 14 to kill him. So yeah, the other issue it was here is that I did have 2 blues, but the last card in my hand is a red. So if I had 3 blues in my hand here, what I likely would have done is just use the Metacarpus and the Crucible of Aetherweave to try Lesson in Lava for 8 damage.
So here, pitch a red Soulbead Strike to prevent 3 damage and take 3.
So yeah, the reason I've searched up a ton of Aether Winds, so it's a 0-cost card that can draw 2 cards or give +1, is basically I'm just sort of hoping for some kind of miracle here. I think at this point I'd figured that I'd kind of lost, so I would just see if I could draw 2 cards and make something happen.
Yeah. Because I guess, drawing even 2 blues or something means that you can go for a blind Kano, hope to hit something like a Sonic Boom, and there's still a chance that, you can squeeze out that final few bits of damage.
So unfortunately I draw the red card and then I just kind of resign myself to my fate here. Yeah, because basically what Karol was saying is correct. Yeah, and then I just reveal the blue and say,
so
good
now
game.
I'm attacking for Enlightened Strike for 7 just to close out the game.
Yeah, so here I think I was just going over with Karol the reason why I blocked out his Kodachis that turn and tried to go for the win. But yeah, like Karol mentioned, the reason I went for the tome is if I draw 2 blue cards there and I get, say, a Sonic Boom on top, I can pitch a Sonic Boom for 4 with my Crucible of Aetherweave. Yeah. That might get through some damage, flip me over another spell like a Blazing Aether that can randomly win me the game.
Yeah.
So I thought, there's no point just conceding when you still have a chance of winning the game. You might as well play it out. But
and sometimes you're able to put enough pressure. I attacked with 1 for Kodachi, holding 3 cards up, but they were all 3 red. If I was forced to pitch all of them, and Kieran was able to block that Kodachi, that just gives him a breathing window, to potentially get an extra turn of Kano in the next turn.
Yeah, so basically I suppose a way I could have played that differently is maybe just going for the... So I'm working through here being could I have won if I did something differently? And that's the thing, sometimes if you feel like you're in a bad spot, you might just have to go for it and hope they don't have the blues in hand to get you. So this is me going through being maybe I could have won if I did this.
Yeah. For me, the takeaway was just, optimize your hand at the start. With the Out of War, I felt it was actually a mistake to keep that in. Kieran, passed his priority, which means he wasn't going to Kano in his first turn. So yeah, I think I should have played that Out of War there.
Yeah, and I think that just shows that Wizard, it's a really powerful deck that can throw out big combos. But if you are able to sort of keep up consistent pressure on them and limit their ability to have set up turns effectively, then sometimes you can put them in a spot like I found myself in there, where I was just kind of playing off the top of my deck or kind of blindly hoping I'd hit the right cards. And from the Wizard perspective, I think that shows why cards like Talismanic Lens are extremely powerful, particularly in Blitz, where you have a 40-card deck.
And I guess that's been your kind of main tossing up whether Talismanic Lens or the Arcanite Skullcap is better in this matchup.
Absolutely. So I said to Karol before the game, I thought about playing an Arcanite Skullcap, simply to give me another option for blocking. So, for example, if he league taps for 4 damage, I can block with 1 card plus the Arcanite Skullcap. Ultimately, I think Talismanic Lens is still probably correct.
Yeah, I feel like the Skullcap gives you a bit more room, but at the end of the day, I feel like it makes you die slower rather than the lens giving you that window to actually win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So the lens there, I think it's important. Like, you don't need to preserve it for the very last moment if you have a big window to use it. But I think you probably saw a mistake from me in that game where I used a Talismanic Lens without sort of a clear idea of where I was going with the turn. So I used it in kind of like, I knew exactly what Karol's turn would be. I knew I could block out all the damage, and it may have ultimately been correct there to just save my Stir the Aether Winds and know that if I can use the Talismanic Lens to hit something like a Fork Lightning just for lethal, or even like a big Sonic Boom to hit more cards, that might have been the most efficient way rather than just sort of cracking the lens and saying, oh, let's hope for the best.
Yeah. And I quite like a lot of kind of ninja players in general, and Katsu specifically, like to really go red line aggro and really push for, those powerful red attacks. Whereas I've always liked to have a buffer of blue cards. So yeah, my list does tend. I'm pretty sure it even has potentially even 10 yellows. So with 10 blues, 10 yellows, and 20 reds, on average, I have that 1 blue, 1 yellow, and 2 reds in my hand. I mean, that's just your average hand, which I'm happy to have 1 yellow, especially if they're 0 cost that I can actually pitch to do things. Yeah,
and it means on Katsu, it enables Karol to then, if I try and force out cards with throwing out damage spells on my turn, he can, pitch 1 or 2 cards and then still threaten with Kodachis and an attack without being completely open. So I think you would have seen that multiple times that game where I'm a bit frustrated trying to be like, I got rid of a blue card, now you've got more blue cards.
I did draw a lot of blues that game, to be honest, which was really good. Maybe I'll even add more.
Yeah, anyway, we hope you found that useful, that gameplay video. Just sort of basically showing how Wizard plays out, showing how you can play a slightly different version of Katsu without going full control or full aggro, and still have enough pressure while holding up enough defense to actually give you a shot against decks like Wizard.
Yeah, thanks for watching.